Hello, everyone. This is Scott Miller, the Chief Marketing Officer and co-founder of RampedUp. We appreciate everybody coming on board. The broadcast will start in 1 second. Hello, all. This is Scott Miller with RampedUp. You have tuned in to alternatives for Salesforce.com customers as Data.com is being sunset. Stay tuned. We will start in just a couple of minutes. We have a tremendous response. It looks like this was a pretty hot topic for everybody. So we will have just a couple more minutes to allow everyone else to log in. Thank you. All right, everybody, let's go ahead and get started. Again, this is Scott Miller with RampedUp. We're talking about alternatives for Salesforce.com customers today. So without further ado, let's get into it. A little bit about your host here. Scott, hold on 1 second, make sure I've got everything I need over here. All right. We were going to have Ken Morris on this as well. Ken unfortunately couldn't join us today for reasons that are outside of his control. So Ken asked that I try to fill in his sizable shoes, and we'll see if we can't do that today. So a little bit about me. I am the founder of RampedUp, the Chief Marketing Officer, also a co-founder of Synthio, a global B2B data management solution. Founded in 2012, and RampedUp was founded in 2016. Also Salesforce.com certified. So I say that just to let you guys know that I have been in the industry for a while and understand a little bit about what we're talking about here today. So here's what we have for an agenda. We want to talk a little bit about why data goes bad. We'll talk about Data.com itself, a glorious history, and how I was a super user of the system. Why are we sunsetting now? What's the point? And then what are alternatives? for Salesforce.com and Data.com users. So this will be our agenda today. A little bit of housekeeping. In the upper left-hand corner, you have the ability to ask questions, and you have the ability to give some feedback. If they are pertinent and germane, I'll make every attempt to try to answer that in the course of the presentation. Otherwise we will answer those questions at the end of the broadcast. Okay. All right. Without further ado, we'll get into it. We'll talk a little bit about why does contact data go bad, right? So think about, why do people even use Data.com in the first place, right? They use Data.com in the first place to clean up, and many times it's been to clean up their Salesforce.com instance, right? So let's think a little bit about, why does contact data go bad? Well, I have here 6 ideas, and quite frankly, being in this industry for the last, 7 or 8 years, I can tell you the number one reason is transiency. And what that means for us is that B2B contact data expires at about a 24 to 36% rate per year, and that's the HubSpot statistic. And if you can just think about, the individuals that are in your department, or even you yourself, when did you get this position, and how many people do you know in your department are under a year in tenure? That has a pretty sizable impact in mass inside of a CRM system. And you can see it, in terms of, old contact records. The flip side of that coin, though, is if there's an old contact record, that means that person has gone to a new place. So, we want to try to ensure that if we do identify an old contact record, we want to figure out where that individual has landed. So transiency, right? The second, we look at too many tables, right? So Salesforce.com has a contact table, they have an account table, they have a leads table, and numerous times, they have duplicative information in every one of those tables. And so, if that information is mismatched, or it's inaccurate, or if it's not populated correctly, or using some sort of abbreviation or acronym that's associated with that contact or lead record, then those tables really can contradict one another and create for duplicative information. Salespeople might be another example why contact data goes bad inside of Salesforce. 15% of inaccurate data is due to misspellings, abbreviations, or acronyms that salespeople will have, or as they try to key in their own information, and that really does have a tangible impact in terms of inaccurate contact data. My favorite are form fills. So everybody that's watching this presentation had to complete a form to get their to get a link to watch this webinar, whether you're watching it live or recorded. And hopefully you gave me the correct information, because obviously you're watching this system. But more times than not, what you'll find is that individuals, especially if there's this concept of a freemium, right? That the price I have to pay might not necessarily be any money, but it might have to be my contact information. And so up to 70% of online form fills are purposefully incorrect. And so you think about the pay to play. I don't think based on this statistic, 70% of individuals aren't really paying to play, right? List buys, this is probably the number one culprit from our vantage point. Contact compilation can take up to 15 months to produce. So think about what that, the statistic that we heard a little earlier about the transiency of today's B2B buyer at 2 to 3% per month. Marry that with a contact list compilation that takes 15 months on average to complete. You're already getting out the door with a pretty inaccurate contact list. And so, where does some of that information come from? Tax records, credit bureaus, trade associations, or even outsourced teams and trying to cultivate information to keep it accurate and lively. Right? And then lastly, you see, relying on email validation. Well, there's a big problem with email validation. And so one is that contacts can exist, but the email will bounce, or the contact could have left and the email doesn't bounce. So if you're relying on the email address and email validation to clean your Salesforce.com instance, here's some of the things that you need to think about, right? A contact can exist and an email can bounce if you have a ridiculously poor sender score. And so what that means is that email servers, or the recipient's email servers, could see a very low sender score. And we've got a couple of questions about where we can find a sender score, so we'll get to that here in a second. Liz. But if you have a low sender score, the recipient's email server might not even accept that information, right? Are you sending bulk emails to the same company? Are you sending 50 or 100 or 150 or in some cases thousands of email addresses to the same email server? Those guys will not take that and they'll push that away. Pooled IP addresses. So you're only as strong as your weakest IP address. If you're pooled with IP addresses, and sometimes that will push you away and allow for your emails to bounce. Even though that email address is accurate and that contact exists, you get a bounce record, you push them out. It could be for one of these reasons. Or high-risk recipients, honeypots, spam traps, .govs, stuff that really can are flagged by recipients' email servers and push you out and bounce your emails. A contact could leave, but the email doesn't bounce, right? And so that's another way that you see that it makes it difficult to clean a Salesforce instance because the email is still going through, but it could be what is called an accept-all server. So 50% of all email servers inside of North America are accept-all. And what that means is that they will confirm the domain. They will just not confirm that the individual, the recipient. And so they can take your email address and farm it or just house it and hibernate it. And you won't know that you will be none the wiser. An email could be forwarded to a replacement or a superior, or you can have a personal email address and you don't know about it, right? So be careful if you're using email validation just to clean your system. So moving on, think about, why Salesforce.com, began its glorious history. And so you see over in the left-hand corner, Salesforce.com enters into a definitive agreement to acquire Jigsaw. And so Jigsaw was purchased by Salesforce and renamed Data.com for those of you that aren't aware. So in 2010, Salesforce purchased Jigsaw for $142 million, creating Data.com. For those of us that are around during that time, Jigsaw was a wonderful tool used by so many sellers to democratize contact data. The crowdsourced data model worked because there really was no other alternative aside from compiled sources. And we saw earlier, waiting 15 months to get a compiled source just wasn't worth it, right? It was a great piece of information. It was a great resource for salespeople. I could exchange my records for another record, and we would both be the better for it. And so, we hired, some Salesforce, some Data.com or Jigsaw.com folks over at Cynthia when I was an executive over there. And one of the guys over there would say it was just like printing money all the time because there really just wasn't an alternative. And you can certainly understand why. But eventually the crowdsourcing model failed, right? So as you see here, and the guy over in the left-hand corner, if you recognize him, that's Winston Churchill, and he once famously said that democracy is the worst form of government, save all others. And so, those things cannot be said today about contact data because simply voting on what a person does and for what company they do it for is not the best form of contact sourcing. The individual themselves are better sources of the truth. And social media outlets like LinkedIn, as you see here, the guy up top handing his business card over to a colleague or perhaps a prospect, that's what LinkedIn proved very quickly, right? As a result, account-based selling and sellers, went directly to the source instead of Data.com, and the tool became somewhat of an afterthought. I think that's, if you think about, what really killed, the concept of Data.com and Data.com Connect, you have to look at LinkedIn, right? It became, LinkedIn wasn't as popular when Jigsaw just became in its infancy and before it was purchased by Salesforce.com. You could reach out directly to the source, so you didn't have to worry about data democracy anymore, right? What you could worry about then was trying to, reach out directly to the person because they were sharing that information with you. Another thing that we have to think about, well, why would Salesforce.com sunset Data.com? Well, another big reason is that, interestingly enough, in the same month, you see that the GDPR is the General Data Protection Regulation is being kicked off by the European Union. And so the GDPR is real. And for those of you guys that aren't paying attention to it or doing a lot to try to ensure that you're compliant with the GDPR, you probably should. Under the GDPR, organizations in breach of the GDPR can be fined up to 4% of annual global turnover, or 20 million euro, whichever one is greater. And that's sizable. And it doesn't matter if you're a US-based company, if you're doing business in Europe, you have to worry about that. And I'm sure that's what Salesforce.com was thinking. There's a consent piece to it. Consent must be clear and distinguishable from other matters and provided in an intelligible and easy accessible form using clear and plain language. And it must be as easy to withdraw consent as it is to give it. So you think about that with a social source model, that's really getting into some precarious situations, as you can imagine, for Salesforce. There's the right to be forgotten, also known as the data erasure piece. And then there's the data portability. So GDPR introduced the data portability, which is the right for a data subject to receive their personal data concerning them and where it came from, which they have previously provided in a commonly used and machine readable format. And so again, if my information was swapped or traded, then that would be difficult to provide that information. So again, think about some of the reasons why data.com might be sunsetting. One, you look at the advent of LinkedIn. Two, you look at the GDPR, and then three, think about the different options that individuals have. Right? When Salesforce.com purchased data.com, marketing automation was also in its infancy. 8 years later, many organizations go outside of Salesforce to house contact data in tools like Marketo. So you think about data.com and how it works specifically with Salesforce.com, and this is the marketing landscape. And for those of us that are marketing, we love this idea of showing how much the landscape has grown, from 500 to 5,000 companies. And that really does take a toll, because if CRM isn't now for every company, CRM isn't or Salesforce rather, more specifically, isn't the database of record anymore. You have marketing automation, you have business development tools like Salesforce, and Outreach.io, right? You have other CRM solutions. Now Salesforce purchased Pardot and ExactTarget to account for this new reality, thus, proving that CRM is no longer the only source of truth. Although today, marketing automation tools don't need, additionally, they don't need the PII, or personally identified information, that data.com provides, to communicate with contact records. Think about a lot of the, things that, tools like Terminus are providing, to provide account-based marketing without the distinguishable PII information or personally identified information. Digital advertising has become very micro-focused by either garnering online intent for retargeting or proactively displaying ads to your chosen accounts. Again, you don't need the contact record as much, right? And then lastly, I think you can take a look at one of the reasons why data.com is being sunset by Salesforce is that there really are new tools and techniques. Right? Look at account-based selling, and my buddy over here, William, a partner over the Bottom Line Strategy Group. Account-based selling, or ABS, does take the target accounts that were identified by ABM and develops them into revenue. While ABM is generally in the hands of the marketing department, ABS is a collaborative effort between marketing and sales. So that's really what we talk about, this 80-20 rule. Right? Let's get the concept of account-based selling is really this 4-step approach that William provides us. We identify your ideal your customer profile. So when you're developing your ICP, you want to consider factors like industry, size, company size, geographic region, how the services or products you provide will work with other tools that customers use in specific pain points. Secondly, you want to try to find the decision makers. When working on an ABS model, a single point of contact with an account just isn't enough anymore. Reacting to demand is not enough. Instead, you'll pinpoint the ideal responsibilities and roles of your target personas and target specific people. The entire buying committee. And one of my favorite stats is from the corporate executive board saying that the buying committee now consists of 5.4 individuals. I've never sold to a fourth of a person before, or 4/10 of a person before, but I think you understand where they're trying to go with that system. Next, you talk about creating an individual approach. That's really what this thing is about in terms of when we talk about content is personalized at the sales rep level. You don't need the big mass of data anymore, right? You need to be more specific about it, right? And develop an organized plan, right? The sequence of your emails and calls and outreach and social touches. This will let you track where you are in your approach and how to process your strategy and execute upon account-based strategy. So I think those are the 4 reasons that you can see why Salesforce would be sunsetting data.com. Moving on to, what exactly would an alternative be? Selfishly, in terms of what RampedUp provides, we are an account-based selling solution that works inside of Salesforce.com. And we take a lot of these, concepts that you've already, that you saw before in terms of why, the solution is being sunset, and really turn them on their ear, right? So one of the things that we provide is a plugin inside of Salesforce, and this looks like this is the old instance, right? You see here a company called TriNet. This is the older instance. This isn't the Lightning instance. And a couple of things that we try to do is that, we try to, let companies understand, if this is an ideal buyer. You think of ideal customer profile. So we do a scoring piece, as you can see here, that will star an account to let you know if this is the type of company that we want to be working for, right? And then a cleaning piece to allow, the same way that Salesforce.com used to work with data.com for cleaning, we're looking for the same thing. Our social sourced and publicly sourced information, provides us with relevant and accurate contact information, and we can clean an account using that level of data. Okay. You see these contact records. What's cool about having an account-based selling approach and using that to clean your Salesforce records is that, the way that companies buy today isn't necessarily departmental, right? It's cross-departmental. You think about eventually winding your way up into the HR, the finance department, or the procurement department, or the IT department. Even if you're trying to sell the line of business, like we are, trying to sell to sales folks and the marketing folks, right? You're going to wind up in the technology department, the procurement, or the finance department, over and above just the business owner. And so, understanding who that buying committee is, even though it is cross-departmental, is really a strength of, what RampedUp provides in terms of trying to be an alternative and trying to provide everybody, right? Let's take the buying committee and just provide those individuals that are members of the buying committee, as opposed to trying to look at department levels, right? And if those folks aren't enough, let us jump out of the system and try to find the buying committee from a larger perspective. Okay. Looking at competition. One of the great things about thinking of Salesforce.com and the power that Salesforce.com has is that with all of this account level data, one of the things I want to do is that, well, if this company is a good company for me to sell to, then who is probably just as good of a company? That company's competitors. And this is what our competition tab would provide. Clicking on the information such as an ADP, as you see here. This, again, getting more of that battle card, getting more of that information, associated with the individuals. Okay. Then lastly, looking at what the technologies are in the system. So, that's pretty important, especially you think about, whether it's a complementary or it is a competitive strategy. Complementary strategy is that, our company works well with this company. It might, you might have a plugin or a function that works well, or it could be completely competitive, where it is a replacement strategy. And this is how you'll be able to tell by the installed technologies inside of the system. All right. So all of our, in terms of a replacement for Salesforce, Salesforce's data.com, this is really where, we are providing, an alternative for our customers and potential customers. And so as a way of introduction, we really have 2 different promotions that can help Salesforce.com customers with this transition as data.com sunsets. Again, May the 3rd is the last day that you can purchase data.com Connect, and then it's going to be sunset over the next couple of months, up to, I think, 12 months. So what can we do to help? We can give you an account-based readiness report. And so what an account-based readiness report really is these 3 things, right? We'll help you identify your customer, your ideal customer profile, and then, understand who your total addressable market is, and then give you a gap analysis between who you have and who you want to have in terms of customers or accounts, right? And then the next piece is the buying committee at those accounts, so your ideal buyer profile, those contacts in terms of department, function level expertise, and doing a total addressable market of those individuals based on your ideal customer profile and your ideal buyer profile. And again, another gap analysis that comes with that. Right. And then lastly, an account-based plan. Like, what is that? And as you saw before, let's look at this 80-20 rule. What are the top 20% of the customers that we should be attacking from a sales perspective, scoring those folks, as opposed to, from a marketing perspective, those 80%. and then we'll give you some ideas and concepts around that. So that's one of the ways that we can help introduce Data.com customers to alternatives. And then the second is honor existing Data.com credits. So look to us to honor your current Data.com Connect plan in terms of credits, and we can incorporate that into your anything that you want to do with us. Again, this is Scott Miller. I am the Chief Marketing Officer and co-founder of RampedUp. We're available on the App Exchange. And so, it is a little different. You're trying to do this all by yourself and not having your colleague. It does seem like it's you're talking in a phone booth as opposed to having a conversation with somebody. So thank you for bearing with me with that. There are a couple of questions that have come about. So allow me to read some of these questions. The first one is, how do you know how many credits do you have? How do you know how many credits you have inside of Data.com? Well, so I don't have that information, right? So you're going to have to go inside of your Data.com account, and I believe in the upper right-hand corner, there's a number of credits that you have. There's a couple of ways that you can purchase Data.com. I think there's a swap piece, and then there's an annual agreement that you commit to. So I think those are the two ways that you can take a look, and we'll honor both of those. Okay. Second piece here is that will it work with customers outside of Salesforce? Yes, we do have standalone solutions. So even if you're a Data.com customer and you don't use Salesforce, we do have standalone solutions, so that will help you. And we can do the same, piece of honoring the same credits, as a standalone solution. Maybe if you're pushing that into HubSpot, I think is another example that we have here from Jill. Does it work with HubSpot? We do work with in terms of an import-export type of functionality with almost any CRM or marketing automation platform. Okay. Will there be a recording sent? Yes, I will send a recording. So yeah, certainly that's the case. And then Rebecca has, will RampedUp be at Salesforce.com connections? I don't know if we'll be at connections. Where is Salesforce.com connections, Rebecca? Maybe you can type that in the system. We can figure out that. So that'll be the case as well. I think if you might mean the Salesforce.com show in the fall, we certainly plan on being out in San Francisco for Dreamforce, the Chicago in June. We're not going to be at the Chicago show in June. There's a show that we're going to participate in called the American Association of Inside Sales Professionals, a Unite conference that's also in June here in Atlanta. Okay, and one last question that we have here: can we speak to some of the contact data accuracy? Yeah, certainly love to. That's a layup. So I think we appreciate that, Justin. That was a nice one. The information that we provide is available it's all publicly available information. And the coolest thing that we have, and that I'm the most proud of in terms of the data that we provide, is that we always link back to the source of the data. So when we're running these account-based readiness reports, or people ask, where did this person come from? The coolest way to look at that is to just follow the link and see where this person came from. Whether it's a social profile or a press release or a career site or a corporate website, you'll see it right then and there, right? And so it takes all the guesswork out of it, and it gives our customers a lot of confidence that that we're not taking their data and repurposing it. Now there are companies out there that do that, and they're probably known to everybody that's listening to this, is that they'll use your data and sell it to your competitors. That is absolutely one of the things that we do not do, because we source 100% of all of our data. So it's an interesting little, it's an interesting tool. It's certainly a differentiator, and we'd love to show you how that works. Okay. All right. So if there are no other questions, we will wrap it up. And again, we appreciate everybody's participation, and appreciate you working or spending a couple of minutes with us, understanding why Data.com was sunset by Salesforce.com. Anyway, from my perspective, and some alternatives that we have at RampedUp to ease that transition for you. And again, there's two things that every viewer of this webcast has available to them. Number one is an account-based readiness report to show how we might be able to transition you into an account-based program inside of Salesforce, and then also honoring data.com credits. All right, thank you guys very much.